All right, guys, so here we go. This is Chapter 7, Section 2 for your biology class. And within this, before I get started, I want to stress the importance that Miss Thomas has sent out a message to all of you guys on the Iceland survey, and we really need you guys to participate in that survey. It really helps us out with finances and stuff here at the school so we can get some stuff that we would like to get, especially right now with everything going on. Some technology and stuff would be really, really nice to have. So if you wouldn't care, jump on there, get that completed for us. But besides that, jumping in here on, sorry, get back. This one's going to be the big one. You guys, if you done your packet one like you were supposed to, one of the first things we came out talking about was this plasma membrane, and that's what this section's all about. Okay, so we're actually starting to get in some real biology now and get into the cell. Before we get into that cell, we want to talk about what's around it and what protects it. So this is all about protecting the cell. This is what the plasma membrane does. This is what it's special for. And it's so simplistic, but it works beautifully. So without further ado, let's get into it and talk about this function of this plasma membrane. So all this is within this, the process of maintaining balance in an organism internal environment is called homeostasis. Pretty much what we're saying is equilibrium. And I know that's still a bigger word, but it's kind of like it's it's even all the way throughout. Okay, it's kind of like whenever you run a bath. If you what do? You set the temperature of the water that you want it at as it's coming out of the faucet. Then you let the tub fill. But once that is all full, that's at a state of homeostasis because the same water went into it and it's chilling at the same rate. All that. If I flooded, if I filled the bathtub the first time with really hot water and then followed it up with really cold water, then what I have is two different water temps, and what will eventually take place is it'll disperse and even out. And that is whenever it's in equilibrium, and that's when we find a state of homeostasis. So, one of the structures responsible for this is this plasma membrane. It's all about keeping things even all throughout. And this plasma membrane, it's thin, flexible boundary between the cell and its environment. So, this right here is kind of like a representation of what it looks like. So you're gonna hear more about these here in a little bit, but these right here, these balls, these blue balls, those are what we call the fatty acid head. Uh, so what this is, it's actually a carboxylic acid head on top of here. And what that does is remember back when we talked about those interactions with polar and nonpolar. Okay, because that's what plays in here. Because then you have these tails. These are the fatty acid tails. Those fatty acid tails, those are just links of carbon and hydrogens throughout. So what you get there is an interaction of nonpolar. Okay, they do not have polar, but the blue spheres and the blue balls up here that you see, those are polar. So literally, this plasma membrane is going to work off of keeping things out purely based off the fact that it uh, keeps polar things from passing through and it keeps non-polar things from passing through. You either are polar or non-polar, either way it goes, and it's not just going to flow through. Now, this thing is built, and it does have some exceptions, which we'll talk about here in a second. With this plasma membrane, this is what I'm talking about. It has some exceptions because it has something we like to call selective permeability. Okay, all this is a big fancy word for saying that it allows some substances to pass through while keeping others out. This is crucially important to us. Okay, we don't need some big, huge process to get certain things into the cell or get certain things out of the cell. We just want to roll it in, roll it out. Certain things we just want to be able to flow like that. And some good examples of this is first off is water. And you're going to learn about this process of how water does it. But water will just diffuse across. Okay. So it'll help out. It'll find that state of homeostasis and it'll find that state of equilibrium. Okay, if there's more water on the outside than the inside of the cell, then water will rush into the cell. If there's more water on the inside of the cell than there's the outside of the cell, water will rush out, and that's why we got to drink plenty of water to stay hydrated and stuff. The really big one right here that I want to talk about is oxygen. Think for a minute, why would I want oxygen to freely bust through and just freely come through? Oxygen is important for life, okay? I had somebody argue with me one time that you don't need oxygen, it just has to be a strong oxidizer. Well, you're correct in the fact that it has to be a strong oxidizer, but our body is designed that it has to use oxygen. It won't use something else, it has to use oxygen. So, in this, um, why are we constantly breathing? Why do we never stop breathing? Is because we're pulling in oxygen, and what we're doing is that oxygen comes in and it travels through the bloodstream through our hemoglobin, myoglobin, and when it travels through there, what will happen is if a cell needs oxygen, it'll literally just flow right through the membrane. It doesn't have to do some big huge process. The reason behind we want it that way is because it's so important to us for us to sustain life. And what you're going to learn, I'm pretty sure it's in the next chapter, is all about cellular respiration. And when we learn about cellular respiration, what you're going to learn, that's how we create energy. And that big proponent of that is oxygen. We have to have oxygen. If we don't have oxygen, we cannot produce energy, and then we're in a lot of trouble. So that's why we want oxygen to freely flow in and just rush right in. Another part of creating that energy, the big one, you've heard me talk about this already, but glucose. Okay, and I'm just going to jump right here and talk about it. Glucose will just run right through too. The reason we want that, that's the one sugar that the whole body will use. Even the brain will use glucose. That's the only sugar the brain will use. So glucose will stay in that closed chair formation like you heard me talk about before, and it'll just roll right through the membrane. No issues, no problems whatsoever. It'll just roll right through, handle everything we want to handle. No problems. It comes in inside the cell. Now, glucose won't leave the cell. The reason why is we want glucose in so that we can take it, that sugar, break it down into energy. That's the fuel source, and it takes the fuel source of glucose and oxygen in the process of cellular respiration to produce the energy that our cells need. Also, with this, think about a byproduct of that. A byproduct of us breathing. We breathe in oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide. So we have no purpose for carbon dioxide. So we want carbon dioxide just to roll out of the cell. That's where this comes in at, is carbon dioxide can just freely roll out of the cell where it's a gas and so there's such small molecules, they can freely roll out. And our plasma membranes are built that way on purpose. It's designed this way with a purpose. And this also is a process of how we can get waste out. Now, I will say this to you, and I'm not going to go on a very deep level because it's more of a biochemistry concept. But I do want you to be aware that waste just sometimes just can't freely just roll out of the cell. Okay. Sometimes we actually have to do certain processes to get waste out of the cell. And when we do that, we'll kick waste out like they're showing here. And waste can't come back in because we have no use for waste. So we just keep repelling it out. We say, no, you will not come in here. All right. It'd be kind of like whenever the trash can's full and your mom's like, take the trash out. And you're like, give me a minute. I'm in a match. All right. I'm playing Call of Duty. Leave me alone. And you're sitting there and you're trying. And after the Call of Duty match, you go to take the trash out. Well, what would your mom do if you came back carrying the trash back in? She's probably going to meet you at the door and say, I said take the trash out. It's the same thing. Okay. You're not going to bring the trash in. We're going to kick it out. All right. So within this plasma membrane, it will control how, when, and how much of various substances enter and leave a cell. All right. This depends on the structure of that plasma membrane. So let's talk a little bit about the structure of this plasma membrane. So the first thing is I want to talk more about this phospholipid bilayer. Okay, phospholipid bilayer. All this is telling you that it's just a two-level fatty bilayer. That's the simplest way I know how to put it. So within this is what you'll see. This is a good representation of it. This is kind of what the plasma membrane looks like. We'll talk about these things here in a second, what these things are. But within this, the phospholipid bilayer, it has polar heads, which I showed you, like they got circled out and bracketed out here. Those are the polar heads, and they have nonpolar tails, which are the orange little tails through there. Now that is a fluid region. There's fluid in there, and that's there for a reason. But another thing within there that you probably are interested in, and let me move me so you can see better. Right here, you see a cholesterol molecule. And I know what you're thinking. Mr. Hall, I thought cholesterol was bad. I thought we wanted to avoid cholesterol. Actually, cholesterol is very important for the plasma membrane to function as it's designed to. Now, if you have too much cholesterol, that's bad. That's really, really bad. You do not want to get a lot of cholesterol. If you do that, you're going to have a lot of health problems. But there is a use for cholesterol, which is why we see it inside of our bodies, is cholesterol will stick in here. So you see these little orange balls between the blue balls? Those little orange ones, those are cholesterol molecules. And the reason they stick in there is they help with the flexibility of the plasma of the phospholipid bilayer. It gives that flexibility to it, and it also, if you add too much, it can form rigidness. Okay, it can make it very, very rigid, so it's not so flexible. That's why we don't want a lot of it. But the cholesterol molecules are in there to help it move and flow around. All right. So, talk more about about this plasma membrane. We're gonna keep talking. So it contains cholesterol, which we talked about, but two other ones we haven't talked about are proteins and carbohydrates. So what you'll see here, the orange, this looks like, I don't know, like a hollowed out tube that sticks in here. That is a protein. More specifically, it's a transport protein. It's a transport protein because it goes all the way through. So you can see this one doesn't go all the way through. It stops in here. That is a membrane protein. Okay. And then what you have are these carbohydrate chains. Now, this is where these things come in at. What we first have are proteins, can be called receptors, and they transmit signals to inside the cell. So what can happen is a protein, like this membrane protein, something attaches to it and it sends a signal. Now this thing has just that ability for one thing to attach, send the signal, and whenever it does that, then it can carry out a chain reaction until something takes place. So that's one use for the proteins. Another one, they serve as support structures for the membrane. So they give support to the plasma membrane. It's kind of like look at the house on a wall of a house. Okay, if I built a wall in a house and I didn't put any 2x4s or studs in it, what's going to happen to my wall? Every one of my boys that enjoy building things and look forward to whenever all this stuff goes away and you get to go back to trade school and do some carpentry, you're like, that wall's gonna collapse, Mr. Hall. You are an idiot. Who would not put structure within a wall, especially if it's load bearing? Even if it's not load bearing, Mr. Hall, how dare you? Exactly correct. Okay, if I built that without studs in it, there's no support to it, and it's the same thing here. It's the same exact thing that you're looking at. Is these proteins, they will build in support for the membranes. Now, the transport proteins are crucially important. They're so important to us because they will move needed substances and waste through the membrane. So this is how we're getting the waste out in one way. Now, I will say in that these proteins are built to where if it goes out, it's not going to come back in. Or if it comes in, it's not going to come back out. All right. These things are built, and we'll talk more about these later on. But these things are literally built to where something connects, the structure changes, it lets it flow in, then something has to happen on the inside of the cell to make it go back to the way it was before. And that's the purpose of these things, to get things in and not let them out, or get things out and not let them in. And that's why we build them the way that we build them in our cells. Uh, Within this slide's just focusing on that cholesterol I was telling you about. So it prevents the fatty acids tails of the phospholipid bilayer from sticking together. That's what gives that flexibility. It allows it to move because they're not stuck together. And then it also contributes to the fluidity of the membrane, which is a big, huge, fancy way of saying it makes it flexible. It will move for us. It's just what we want. So then carbohydrates will define the cell's characteristics and help cells identify chemical signals. So within this, it's really, really important to us to identify stuff happening within the body. So let's say like somebody gets sick right now. Then what will happen is there's cells that are in our body that are literally built with these carbohydrate chains. And as soon as whatever the sickness is connects to it, it goes, hey, we need to attack this. Okay, it's kind of like all those vaccines we got when we were kids, and you guys are still getting today. Those vaccines were, I'm gonna scare y'all a little bit. I don't mean to. Okay, it's nothing scary. Like there's a lot of science behind it. Um, I'll just go with what the first vaccine was. The first vaccine was a smallpox vaccine. And this is the father of vaccinations that actually came up with this idea. He had noticed something, that smallpox was killing a lot of people, but he noticed that people that had uh, taken care of cows that had cowpox, and then they got cowpox, could not get smallpox. So he had this idea, and this is before all these like pest regulations and everything were implemented, which thank God they are now, so this can't happen anymore. But what he had done is he had this idea. So he took a young boy from his plantation, and what he had done is on his arm, he took a scalpel and he put 5 slashes across his arm. Then he went to a cow and actually opened one of the pustules, had cowpox in it, and he rubbed it all on the openings on the boy, and he covered it up. Turns out, what happened? Boy got cowpox. So, boy gets cowpox. He survives cowpox. He's all better, no issues. So then the guy turns around, finds somebody's got smallpox, and he brings the same boy back. He's so excited. He takes hold of him, slices up his arm again a little bit. It wasn't nothing violent, but he did open the skin. Uh, he cuts open the pustules that has smallpox in it, rubs it on the boy's arm, and then watches the boy, and the boy never got smallpox. So he looked and he said, because we exposed him to this, he won't get this. And it's the same process of like what's happening with vaccines today. And what it does is it exposes you to enough of it so the body picks up on it, and what they build are these antibodies to it. So what'll actually happen is like those vaccines and stuff, it's put these certain carbohydrate chains on there that will respond to them. And if something comes into the body, it'll connect to that, send the signal to the cell and say, hey, yo, this is in here. We need to take it out. And then it'll start sending signals, and this is also how it happens, is this is how the cells communicate with each other. They send these chemical signals. So once one gets the chemical signal, it goes to the next one, and the next one, and they keep spreading throughout until the body is aware, like, hey, we got a problem here, we need to fix it. And they start fixing it. All right, hopefully that makes sense. Then I really hate this one, but this is just like a way of looking at how this is just a model of the look and see what the plasma membrane looks like. This is the fluid mosaic model, and all it does is describes the phospholipids in the bilayer as a sea, in which other components can float and move around. I know, I think the same thing about it, but it is what it is. And then we have the different substances in the plasma membrane. They create a pattern of mosaic on the surface of the cell. So pretty much like what we're saying is this is the C, the blue is the C, the orange and the green sticking out of it are kind of like buoys or limbs and stuff just floating on the sea surface. That's kind of what it looks like. It's just a way of picturing what you would see. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for Chapter 7, Section 2. We have covered that up now. I will let you guys know also that I have your packet 3. Um, I got it printed, so whenever we roll that out, if you guys end up coming back to school and I hand it to you, that's perfectly fine. Or if you guys actually go, if we're not here and we have to do like what we did before, do a drive-through and then do um, not only do the drive-through, but if we had to go and drop them off by bus, we can do that again. And that is gonna have some work in it. It's gonna have the worksheets and stuff that normally we would do in class on stuff that I've already covered. So please, please, please uh, be sure that you're watching these videos, that you're taking your notes and everything. I'll send these PowerPoints to you. Also, with this, um, please take that survey that Miss Thomas sent to you all. Besides that, I greatly appreciate it. Hope you guys are having an incredible time. Miss you all. Love you all. Peace out.